Hi.
We just finished watching the finale. Welcome to Pros and Pros.
Oh my goodness. It was quite the episode. I know they say that every season it's the most dramatic finale, but this time it really was the most dramatic finale of The Bachelorette.
It was pretty dramatic.
It was really dramatic.
I can't really compare to previous seasons because I've not been, I've only been watching while you and I have been together, but I gotta say, ooh, Nelly.
Ooh, Nelly.
Yeah. Where do you want to start?
Should we start at the very beginning?
Let's start with Marcus. So she makes quick work of Marcus, right?
Yeah, so both of the meet the family same day. Marcus was second, and
Yeah, Devon goes first. He's seeking the approval of the family. The brother says, yeah, no disrespect to you, can't give that yet. I haven't met the other guy, which is fair. I think that her family is very protective of her, or Jen's family is very protective of her. No fault on that. I mean, we see this at the end of every season. The family is pretty protective, and I think that's great. I will say that I felt like Jen's mother was very guarded about her. I don't know if that's because, she was a single mom raising Jenn, or like what that is like, but she was very guarded, and the brother was as well.
we all bring our stuff to the table.
There's clearly a sense of responsibility to protecting his sister, and it was a thick wall of defense. And so by the time that Marcus showed up, I think the question that the family was really wanting to know is, do you love our daughter? And this is something that Marcus has been struggling with all season long. This is our character arc. Will he say that he loves her? What are your thoughts about that?
And the answer was no. There was a lot of silence when the brother was asking, like,
It was painful.
do you love my sister? Do you see yourself getting there? There was just a lot of silence. It was very clear that he is not there. And later we see a Hail Mary. That's a football term, if you didn't know, Randall. Where...
I pretend that I don't know about football. I know the goalie. I know the 3-point line. I know football, okay?
So Jenn comes to his room before they're supposed to go on a date, and she's
Marcus's.
basically like, she's like, what's going on? What's the deal here? And he says, like, I love you. And it's the first time he's said it. And mind you, basically, Jesse told him, like, bro, you got to tell her how you feel or you're going to lose her.
Yeah.
And he did, and he still lost her because it was just like too little too late.
Yeah, exactly.
And she saw patterns of her own former toxic relationships and how she was giving her all to him and he was not giving it back to her. And there has actually been some stuff that's come out that he has his own former toxic relationships where he's been emotionally abusive and potentially a cheater, which is really unfortunate. I think it's really, I don't know that they should have really had him out on stage tonight.
And I don't know anything about that. Like, I know about that from you. Like, you told me about that.
Reddit.
Haven't seen anything on the socials. Don't know anything about it. But I think that you saying that about Marcus, it was pretty clear watching his interactions with Jen's family and then ultimately watching his interactions with Jenn, both when she was breaking up with him and in the debrief on the finale, that he is still actively going through stuff and not working on it. I say this myself as a guy.
He needs therapy.
You know, that like my guy radar was going off and you were sitting there watching, and I was saying, you know, what I'm noticing is that he is very, in his language, it was very defensive. It was very me-centered, very I-centered. He was trying to rewrite what we had just seen by saying, you know, that he wanted to kind of give her that and give her the breakup, that it was a mutual breakup. No part of that seemed mutual. She was breaking up with him. And I was very surprised that Jenn did not make a bigger deal out of that. I mean, apparently by the time that we got to the end of the finale, Jenn had other things on her mind. But his entire version of events was like, wait, that's not what we just saw. And that's also not what we saw all season long. This thing that you said was a Hail Mary with him trying to say, I love you at the end. Yeah, I mean, it fell flat because clearly he just was not going to get there. And even at this point, after the fact, is not there and may never get there. You know, so this stuff that you're saying about, you know, all these other relationships that have come to light as we were moving towards the finale, I don't know anything about it, but just kind of hearing about this third hand, I got to say, it kind of tracks that this is someone who, every time that he talks, he's talking about past trauma. Every time that he talks, he is talking about being adopted. He's talking about things that happened while he was deployed. And no disrespect to that trauma, but at some point, and I say this as someone who has lived through trauma myself, at some point, you need to look that in the face and you need to say, I am not defined by those things. And the fact that he continues to bring it up, I think still says that maybe he's just not in a place where he can give himself in a healthy way to someone else, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know anything
Marcus,
about that?
if you're listening, please go to therapy.
You know anything about that? Guys that try and rewrite the past or try and rewrite events?
All right, moving on. I want to talk about Devon.
Pause. I want to give a recap. Up to tonight's episode, I have been on Devon's team. I've been pretty... that's clearly been the character that I've been following, and I say character intentionally. That is the character that I've been following this season. He seems like a great guy, very Jen-centered, very enthusiastic to meet her, to be in her life, to know her, and ultimately to fall in love with her. That's my recap.
Now you're being silent like Marcus. Yeah, so Devon had a good, although, you know, family was hard on him, meeting Jen's family, but he maintained, like, he is so in love with her, he will not abandon her, keyword, and that he just wants to spend the rest of his life with her. And it seemed like he meant it, and he really cared about her, and that it was good. You know, there were definitely lots of times in the season where he would, like, get in his head. But it seemed...
especially as we were approaching the finale. That was happening more often.
It seemed to the viewer that he was in his head because there were other men there, and not... at least to us, that it was because he's not sure. But basically in the episode, we come to find out that he had broken up with her during the period when they had finished filming and before tonight's episode aired. They broke up, it sounded like about a month ago. And, I mean, it was clear that, like, Jenn was not acting, and Jenn was absolutely brokenhearted. I mean, when you hear those real sobs, like, when you're having an ugly cry, you know that's a real cry. And it was really painful to watch. Because, yeah, we've seen heartbreak before on the show, but I think Jenn, you know, talked so openly about her relationship or lack thereof with her dad, and the toxic relationship she's been in the past. You know, the guys met that ex-boyfriend who showed up in New Zealand. And so it was like she had made it so clear to everyone that if you are not here for me, if you are going to abandon me, like, leave now. And
also, I would add, she continued to ask them to communicate so that she would not be abandoned. I mean, that came through strongly all season long, was that she was still dealing with wounds from her parents, particularly abandonment issues, and was very clear, like, asking them, it felt to me, asking them, you know, week after week, in some way, are they still in? Are they still invested?
yeah, I felt like he gave really poor answers. Like
In the debrief.
In the debrief on after the it used to be called After the Final Rose, but now they film it live, and so it's all condensed into one. But yeah, I felt like he showed no remorse. I felt like he didn't like that he was being painted as the bad guy. And I think that it's one thing to, you know, break up with someone after dating for a couple weeks, but they were engaged to be married, and they had said, I love you. Like, yes, maybe they only had dated for 8 weeks, and then however many months the show had finished filming, but getting engaged is a big deal, and that is an added level of commitment, an added level of responsibility, and he breaks up with her in a 15-minute phone conversation.
According to Jenn. We don't know his side of the story.
True.
Whenever it felt to me like she was trying to give him outs or give him space to say his version. And instead what we got from him was, well, that's what you're saying, that's what you're thinking. I understand. I don't disagree. I'm not going to argue with you. It was nothing. I mean, we did not get that. My thought is, if you're wanting to get on television, you're wanting to be defensive, if you're wanting to at least, you know, present your side of the story, do that. We didn't get that at all. And I think that, to me as the viewer, I have to kind of fill in this void, this gap of knowledge of what happened after they got engaged. We see them, they show the footage of Jenn proposing to Devon, and then Devon proposing back to Jenn. And it's very sweet. We don't know what happened after that, except for what Jenn says, and what Jenn says is, you know, trying to give him space to say what happened from his perspective. We don't get that at all. And so I have to say, this was, by all appearances, the scene of a crime. He abandoned her, and it's pretty clear that that's what happened. And, again, as you said, there's no remorse. I mean, even in the replay of the engagement, you can see Jenn, you know, in the bottom corner in a little square. You can see her crying as she's kind of moving through these events in her memory. And he's just staring at her. I mean, it's creepy that he fills up the majority of the box over her shoulder and is just staring at her like, stop crying, stop crying, stop crying. It, to me, was reminiscent of the of when Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump debated, and he just was always at the edge of the camera, you know, looming. It just gave off that same vibe, that maybe we don't know your side of the story, but bruh, you look guilty as hell right now. So,
you know, I also felt like, so she was like, I'm doing it my way, I'm going to propose to him, which I loved, and I have to give a lot of credit to Jesse Palmer, the host, because he reiterated multiple times on the live segment that, you know, she did do this her way, and she should be proud of doing it her way and, being who she is and standing firm in that. And I think that was really kind because she certainly needs that encouragement. Anyone needs that encouragement. But when we were watching the proposal, which poor Jenn, she's like, do we have to watch it? I mean, do I have a choice? Which clearly the producers were like, no, you don't have a choice, When she proposed to him, he smiled, but he didn't actually seem that enthusiastic, to the point where I said to you, maybe he wasn't even actually going to propose.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think, like, once she proposes, then is it like, oh, yeah, I guess I'm proposing now? Because obviously they all meet with Neil Lane, so he already had a ring, but
And he had already said yes when she had proposed, so it
yeah,
kind of like tries to restore his masculinity in some way, or maybe some power play that like he needed to do it in return, or like he had the ring in his pocket, so
but
may
his
as well.
face just did not show enthusiasm that she was choosing him and wanting to spend the rest of her life with him. Yes, he was using words 1,000 times over, but we all know that actions speak louder than words.
Yeah, I mean, until that moment, until we saw the proposal, particularly like that minute or so from like where she proposes to him and she's kind of finishing that out and they're embracing and all this, I'm sitting there and I'm wondering, is this something where like he feels diminished or emasculated in some way, that like she has proposed instead of him, that it's not following the script that he maybe wrote in his head, that nothing about this relationship has really followed any part of the script that he may have written about what a relationship looks like. I think that it says a lot. I mean, even if that is not the case, I think that the possibility that is the case says a lot about where masculinity is at. And I think that the Bachelorette seasons are really good character studies. Even over the years when I've kind of lightly watched an episode here and there, I think that they're always really good character studies in where our gender performance is and our understanding of self is, that there are these narratives that we have to fulfill, that the man has to propose first, or whoever is taking that more dominant role in the relationship is the one who has to propose. I think it was really kind of sweet that she proposed to him. I mean, I don't think that there was a point where you ever proposed to me, but you did make it very clear, hey, we're getting married and you need to
I want
do
to
something
marry
about
you.
it. Yeah, you were very clear that like, hey buddy. I think at one point you even like tapped your wrist and you were like, tick tock, tick tock. Come on. So I think that, something about that raised a question for me. And this lack of enthusiasm, I wonder if it's because what he had built up to in his mind, the reserves of courage that he had to build to get to that moment where he was going to propose, and now it all kind of comes apart because she is the one who's doing it. I think there's a lot, we see this every season of The Bachelor and The Bachelorette, that after it culminates, then you start to actually get to know this person, and those relationships tend to fall apart. And I think that mother wisdom, being what it is, when Jen's mom said, you're not ready to get married because you don't know this person. In our culture, it takes a lot longer to get to know someone. I even said something when she said that like, she's got it. She's got it on the head right there. And so when it all kind of fell apart, for the rest of the night, I kept thinking, yeah, her mom called it. So.
Yeah. It does seem like while her family was really protective of her, it does seem like they're also incredibly supportive of her.
100%, yeah.
That I feel really grateful that she has her family. And, I hope that she feels her power and feels her pain, but knows that like she did it her way and she owned it. And while you can't control everyone else, like she controlled her narrative to the best that she could and listened to herself as well as she could have. And so hopefully she's really proud of, how she acted during it. I know you had some mixed feelings about the way that she handled some things earlier in the season, but I'm curious if you feel like your opinion of her evolved or if it remains that she didn't make the best choices.
I think that... Here's what I think. And I don't say this. I think I was anticipating you saying something about that because I know that I have not been always in Jenn's corner week after week. I think that her mother, that moment with her mother when she said, I don't think that you're ready. I think that that was a very telling thing because what we saw from Jenn pretty much 3/4 of the season was that she was there to have fun. She was there for herself. She was there to have fun. She was there to, to be herself, to express herself. And I would say that's not really, although that is popular, particularly on social media, to take that approach. I don't think that it really builds a healthy relationship, and it also does not have the architecture in place for a relationship. When you are focusing only on yourself, there is no space for someone else. If you are not building space for that other person from the foundation, I think it's probably going to fall apart. I did not know how, and I did not know when. I am relieved for her that it fell apart early and fast so that she can move on with her life, rather than, as we've seen with some of the other individuals, that it takes time, and then you break apart, and then you have to rebuild your entire life, and then you have to go to Bachelor Island, and you have to have sex for a couple of months to figure your stuff out, and then you're back on the show as another contestant. At least we have a fast track to restoration here. How about you? What are your thoughts on Jenn now that the season has come to an end?
My heart goes out to her, truly.
Yeah.
I really didn't know, I think I've admitted that I had seen a spoiler about how it ended, but I actually had not heard any of these rumors about them breaking up. And so I really was truly surprised. And I have seen a lot of, I would say, female empowerment on Jenn's Instagram lately. She's been posting absolutely stunning photo shoots. If she chooses to stop being a nurse, she could definitely be a model, or she can do both. I hope that she continues to help people because she seems to be very caring and empathetic. But so I think mostly just I feel my heart goes out for her, and I think that's got to be really hard that he wouldn't have a conversation offline with her before they came on air, and I'm sure they still have a lot more to talk about, and I kind of hope that they can talk offline.
I don't think he's gonna do it
because I just think that maybe he'll be less of a coward. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think that's gonna happen. I think that if he had anything to say, he would have said it. And I think that the fact that while she was crying, that he just stared at her, I think that he is beyond done. There was even, Jenn brought up that he was following other people on Instagram. And so there was this hint that he acknowledged that he followed these other accounts, but he never acknowledged that there was any connection there. I think that he's moved on. And I think that in his mind, the male brain being what it is, they're done. That's it. They don't have anything else more to talk about. They don't need to debrief. It's over.
Just wonder what happened.
Yeah.
What made him, the day before they're supposed to go on a weekend retreat, that he's like, oh, we're done. I don't know. So, sad ending to this season of The Bachelorette.
But very in tune with where relationships are at, with ghosting and abandonment.
Yikes. Well, on a happier note, since you mentioned us getting engaged, I realized that we will have gotten engaged 4 years ago on November 5th. And November 5th this year is an election. So I think it's going to be a great day. That's all I'll say.
Oh, I'll say I hope Kamala wins. I don't understand. I genuinely don't understand why anyone would support any other candidate for president other than Kamala. So I hope it will also be a good anniversary and election day.
We'll be using those flutes and drinking some champagne for one night and one night only. Thank y'all so much for listening.
Thanks for watching this season. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being a part of it and allowing us to share ourselves with you. So there we are.
We had a good time.
Bye.
Bye.